What's going on, everyone? So, did a video diving into the Dallas Mavericks and potentially trading for Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis is expected to be shopped by the Dallas Mavericks. But Anthony Davis isn't the only player on Dallas, but if Dallas ends up trading Anthony Davis, they're probably having a fire sale, right? You don't trade your best player on a team that's trying to win right now to then go and say, oh, no, we're gonna still try to compete. No, you might as well tear it down at that point, and you're basically keeping everybody that's 23 or under. Now, Dallas has several players that I actually do think make a lot of sense for the Spurs for now and the future. Obviously, in a perfect world, if you could get a guy like a Max Christie or something like that, just like a legit 3-and-D guy, slot in at 3 or something like that would be cool. But I don't really think that they'll trade those guys. Like, again, I think Derek Lively, because if you're going to hit the reset button, talking like, Cooper Flagg, Derek Lively, Max Christie are probably the closest to untouchable as possible because, you're trying to rebuild, right? So those guys would be like kind of your foundation pieces. But I look at like, okay, what positions does this team need? At some point, the Spurs are going to have to do some type of like consolidation trade and stuff. And the 4 spot and a more ready now 3, I think would make a lot of sense for Spurs, assuming the Spurs continue to play to the level that they're playing, right? Like if the Spurs continue to win and they're one of the top teams in the Western Conference, and it's like, oh wait, hey, they might be able to do something special this year. I think you almost at that point should make the moves in order to best put your team in the position to have success and win. Right? Yeah, if you can win a championship this year, why not? Right? So to me, I look at guys like a PJ Washington, right? Starting 4. Start him alongside Victor Wembanyama, his defensive versatility. He was a guy that on Charlotte was not thought to be a defensive player at all, right? He was looked at as like, hey, he's a fine offensive player, but, as your starter, and then he got traded to Dallas, and Dallas had the mission of, hey, we want to win. And he bought in and was in many ways their defensive anchor on that finals run. He was huge for that team on that finals run. I think you do a lot of same things on the Spurs, especially for a Spurs team that's second in defense that wants to be the best defense team in the league. There's that, hey, we need you to be great defensively. And you got to think, PJ Washington was like defending the best player on most nights and all kinds of stuff, right? So he's a guy that I think would add some real versatility, give you some floor spacing, give you some scoring, some shooting. He wouldn't be reliant on guys like De'Aaron Fox, stuff like that. But he also can play on ball, play off ball, do all kinds of things. I think PJ Washington makes a ton of sense for the San Antonio Spurs team. He's not, a guy that's going to break the bank financially. So he's a guy that is cheap enough for you to go trade for and even give a new contract. You could probably give him a cheap enough contract to where you could keep him around and it's justified and makes sense. Obviously, costs for all these guys is what it really boils down to, right? Like if you have to trade, if they're like, yeah, we'll do it, but we want Dylan Harper or something, like, you're crazy, right? Like it has to make sense for the Spurs. It has to be a trade that makes sense for Spurs, right? And the Spurs, look, they're one of those organizations. They're not just going to make a trade just to make a trade, right? It has to be an opportunistic trade. It has to make sense for them. It has to be something that they can look at and go like, yeah, that was great. Not like there's nothing wrong with overpaying for, like I talked about. I'm one of those guys, like I don't mind overpaying if it's justified. Right? If it's something you really need, it's something that is the difference maker and it's a justified overpay, it's fine. But there's levels to overpay, right? Like, I don't mind overpaying a little bit for something that's worth it than otherwise. But, I look again, PJ Washington is a guy that I think makes a lot of sense. Klay Thompson is expected to be shopped. Personally, I'd stay away from Klay Thompson. His 3-point shooting would be great. His experience would be great. But he just looks like a former shell of himself. I think he needs to go to a team that has like a true play. Like he needs like a team like Detroit. I think makes some sense with like Cade Cunningham, the way that he's able to make plays and get guys open. The Lakers with like Luka, LeBron, and also like the only way I see, because Klay Thompson at this stage of his career can't create. He's essentially like Ray Allen in Miami, right? Like he's a spot up catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Right? You tell him where you want him planted, he's waiting, and you have your guy kind of creating, doing everything, and just kicking out shooters. Klay Thompson would make sense as like a shooter, but personally, I would stay away from him. I just don't think he's worth I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze with Klay Thompson. He's making $16+ million. Personally, I think he's kind of the last thing that this team needs, but just wanted to mention him because they are supposed to be shopping him. He is a guy, he is a name that people bring up. But the other two guys that I think make some sense is Daniel Gafford. I wouldn't hate as, just like, again, another interior presence. You have Luke Cornett, you have Kelly Olynyk, you have Bismack Biyombo. But maybe you could look to move off of a Kelly Olynyk at some point and kind of have Daniel Gafford and Luke Cornett. You could argue Luke Cornett gives you enough. You don't really need Daniel Gafford, but Daniel Gafford is younger. That gives you that long-term piece. Again, it comes down to cost. Like, what would it cost you? And I mean, you could, if you wanted to, just move Wemby to the 4 full-time, right? And just have Wemby be the 4 full-time, maybe start Luke Cornett or start Daniel Gafford and then have Luke Cornett the other back you up, right? Like, there'd be options in that regard if you wanted to do that. Again, probably lower on my totem pole. That's why I mentioned PJ Washington first, because I think PJ Washington is probably the guy that makes the most sense. Daniel Gafford, again, I wouldn't hate. I don't think it's like a pressing need or something that you go and run to the door to go do. But Naji Marshall and PJ Washington are the two guys I most would like to see the Spurs go and land. Again, the two positions that I talked about. The 3, like getting a more proven 3, a guy that, just has more experience, kind of knows his role, plays his role, give you a little slight upgrade at the 3, as well as the 4. You talk about a guy in Naji Marshall that can slot in to either spot. He's more of a 3 than a 4, but he can slot into either forward spot. Same thing with PJ Washington. PJ Washington is more of a 4 than a 3, but he could slot into either forward spot. But personally, for me, Naji Marshall, I just think would make a ton of sense. He's 27 years old. Talk about a guy 6'6", 6'7", can defend 1 through 4 for you, right? A guy that can knock down the open 3, a guy that has experience in this league, is comfortable in this league, just gives you kind of more of that consistent upgrade, but also a piece that can help long term. Right? You talk about a guy that it wouldn't just be for right now. It's a guy you could have for the next, 5 years or whatever. And he's a guy that'd be cheap enough, right? And he's not a guy that you would have to necessarily start. So if you want to stick with a Julian Champagnie, or say Carter Bryant becomes that guy at some point, right? Naji Marshall is a guy that you could just slot into your backup. Now you just have another rotation guy, and he's one of the kind of better kind of glue guys in the league, one of the better role guys at that 3-and-D role in the league, as far as like those kind of mid-tier guys, not the high-end guys. So Naji Marshall, especially, again, he's making, I believe, $9 million off the top of my head. So he's cheap enough for you to go and trade and give up, and a guy that could really add to this team. If you could get PJ Washington and Naji Marshall, I think that could do wonders for this team. Give you a starting 4, give you a starting 3 even, or again, just rotation guys. I think that would be a great approach. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. It's me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.